Laura worked the evening shift at Craig's diner. She usually made decent money since Craig's is the type of place where loyal regulars tip well and appreciate good service. It didn't hurt that Laura would often end up running the place alone on slow nights, an impressive feat that didn't go unnoticed by her patrons. They often said things like, "What are you doing working here? You could have your own place, easy." Unfortunately, recent events had put business in quite a lull. For Laura, whose wages generally revolved around gratuity, slow business meant less cash to take home to the hungry bills stacking up on her counter. If she didn't have such personal woes to occupy her, she may have been more concerned about the reason people weren't going out to eat so much. Over the previous 2 weeks, there had been 6 murders in town. The killer was racking up bodies indiscriminately. They displayed no preference for age, sex, race, class, or occupation. The cops were having a hell of a time working out what the killer's motive might be. The best they could figure was that the murders were born of opportunity. The mayor warned everyone to be on guard and only go out when they had to, and never alone. So Craig's, along with every other restaurant, bar, gym, theater, and so on, had seen business plummet. "They'd better get this guy quick," Craig said to Laura when she showed up for her shift. "If he keeps leaving bodies behind, maybe they will," Laura said darkly. "Well, if they don't and I can't keep this place running, he might get one more body for free," Craig said, putting a finger gun to his temple and pulling the trigger. Laura pushed his hand down and shushed him, nervously glancing around the diner to see if any customers had seen his charade. Craig came up in a different time, a time where someone could joke around about suicide without receiving a slew of 1-star reviews online. Fortunately, there were only 2 customers at the time, and both were occupied with their phones. "Hey, listen," Craig said. "I told Antonio if it doesn't pick up in here by 6, he should hit the road. You alright managing the kitchen and the floor?" "Aren't I always?" Laura replied. "That's my girl." Craig grabbed his keys off the counter and said, "Anyway, I'm gonna split. Gotta take the kid to T-ball." He started toward the door, then seemed to remember something and came jogging back around the counter. "Oh, hey, I almost forgot. See that guy over by the window?" he asked, pointing to a man in a white dress shirt with a black tie loosely hanging from his neck. He had dark hair and tired eyes. He looked beaten down, but determined. "He's an FBI guy they called in to help solve the murders," Craig said. "Treat him good. Drop some hints about how bad we need him to get his job done so we can get back to ours, eh?" Craig nudged Laura. She laughed, and he went back to the door. With a nod to the FBI guy, Craig was gone. The FBI guy caught Laura's stare and smiled. She smiled and held up her index finger to indicate she would be right with him. After tying her apron on and grabbing her little notebook and pen, she went to the man's table. "Good afternoon, I'm Laura. Did Craig get your order already?" Laura asked. "Oh, no, not yet, but to be honest, I'm not really hungry." "Could I just get another coffee?" the man replied. He smiled kindly. He seemed to be sizing Laura up, seeing right through her friendly facade and examining the struggle and worry behind her eyes. He quickly added, "I'll be ordering something soon, I promise. I told Craig, and I hope you don't mind, I'll be here for a while. I just need somewhere to review this case. The police station is so drab. I find my mind wanders too much there." "Of course," Laura said, returning the agent's smile. "I'll be right back with that coffee." While Laura filled an insulated thermos of coffee for the agent, she couldn't help but feel a small flutter of excitement at being so close to the investigation that had gripped her town. She told herself not to pry or to pester the man. He had said he came there to focus after all. But the opportunity to discuss an ongoing serial murder case with a prominent member of the investigation was almost too good to be true for Laura. When she brought the steaming pitcher to the table, she said, "So, your case. Craig said you're working the murders around here?" "That's right," the agent replied. He reached across the table to shake her hand. "Special Agent Newton." "Nice to meet you. If you don't mind, can I ask how the investigation's going?" Laura asked. Agent Newton chuckled. "Folks around here are pretty scared, huh? Seems like all this killing has really put everyone on edge." "You're right about that," Laura said. It's killing us here at the diner. No pun intended. I'm barely scraping by." "Well, then you deserve to at least know how the investigation's going, I think. Have a seat." The agent gestured across the table for Laura to sit. She looked over her shoulder to check on the other customer, but saw he had gone and left a small mess of cash on the table. "I don't see why not," she said, taking a seat across from Newton. "Great. I could use someone to run this stuff by anyway. Sometimes it helps to lay out all the facts and get a fresh perspective." Laura couldn't help but grin. She couldn't help but feel a small rush of gratification. "Let's start with how we know these murders are all connected," Newton continued. "The killer's been leaving something from the previous victim at every crime scene. Something personal that could only have come from the deceased. For example, he stuffed the first victim's credit card in the second victim's mouth." Laura shuddered. The second victim, Shirley Watson, had been a convenience store cashier. Not so different from a diner waitress, she thought. "A credit card in the mouth of a cashier? That seems a little coincidental," Laura said, unable to help herself. "Do you think he's planning these murders? The news said they're random." The news. I wouldn't put too much stock in what the talking heads are telling you," Newton said. "I'd say there's enough evidence to say this guy is methodically choosing each victim and carefully planning the murders. Making them look chaotic and random is actually a part of his MO, ironically." "So you know it's a man?" Laura asked. Well, I suppose we don't know per se, but it's a pretty safe bet. The strength required to commit some of these murders, like that contractor who got hung up in the park, plus the sadistic nature of the crimes, leads me to believe the killer's a male. Bill Heinrich, a local contractor and the fourth victim. He had installed the window Laura now sat in front of with the agent. He was a short man, but quite muscular. He must have weighed at least 200 pounds, yet somehow the killer had managed to hang him from his feet in a tree at Goodley Park. Then the killer had made a long cut down Bill's back and let him bleed out slowly. A 13-year-old boy found the body on his way to school. "What was Bill's connection to the third victim?" Laura asked. Newton grunted as he swallowed some coffee. "We almost didn't notice at first, but it was the rope. You remember the third victim, Michaela Fields? She had an obsession with rock climbing. The rope Bill had gotten tied up with belonged to her. So who came next? I mean, I've been following the news, but they don't give much more than the names," Laura said. "No, they don't. They tend to leave out the finer details of these things," Newton replied, sounding bitter. "The next victim was Remy Gonzalez. His connection was another tricky one to put together. His pant legs were glued together with a bonding material Bill Heinrich often used. We found traces of it in Remy's ears and eyes, too." Laura cut in. "And he's the one who was pushed down the stairs, yes," Newton finished. "It seems he was rendered blind and deaf, then pushed down the stairs at his apartment complex with his legs glued together." Laura giggled. She didn't mean to, she tried to suppress it, but she couldn't help herself. Newton looked disappointed. "I'm sorry," Laura said, collecting herself. "It's not funny, it's just... Doesn't that seem a little juvenile? I mean, the killer goes from bleeding someone out slowly to pushing them downstairs with their pants glued together?" Newton cracked a smile, but it didn't seem sincere. "Juvenile, huh?" he said. "Would you say the sixth kill seemed juvenile?" Laura's smile vanished. The sixth victim, Olivia Montana, had been drowned in her own kitchen sink. She had been an artist, a painter specifically. There were 2 public murals in town that she had painted. Although not many people had known her personally, almost everyone knew of her. The town was still reeling from her violent death. Her hair was tied around the handle of a 55-pound dumbbell taken out of Remy Gonzalez's apartment, Newton said seriously. The killer turned on the water after he tied her head to the dumbbell and put it in the bottom of the sink. She knew she was going to die for a while before it happened. "How did you figure all that out?" Laura asked. "Oh," Newton uttered, looking away shyly as if he had said too much. I can't give you too many details. I'm sure you understand." "Of course," Laura said, standing. "Would you excuse me a second? I need to check on something in the kitchen." "Sure thing," Newton replied. Laura walked around the corner and through the kitchen door. She found Antonio, the cook, removing his apron. "Hey, Laura," he said. "Craig said I could head out at 6 if it wasn't busy, but I'm going to leave early. We haven't had a new table all afternoon." "Oh, okay," Laura said. Antonio sensed something uneasy in her tone. "Is that all right with you? I can hold out until 6 if you'd like," he replied. No, I'll be okay. It's just, talking to this FBI agent is creeping me out, I think. I thought it would be fun to get close to the investigation, but it just made it so much more real." "I hear ya. Well, at least you know you'll be safe here with a federal agent so close." "Yeah, I guess so. Have a good night, Antonio." With a final wave, Antonio disappeared through the back door. Laura returned to the dining room to see if Agent Newton was ready to order any food. She hoped he might so she would have an excuse to stay in the kitchen. She hadn't liked how serious he became towards the end of their conversation. Talking to him wasn't fun anymore. When she stepped around the corner, she saw Agent Newton had left his table. He must have gone to the bathroom, she thought. He had drank most of the coffee she brought him after all. She approached his table to clear away some of the emptied cream and sugar packets and noticed he left his badge behind. It seemed odd to her that he would just leave his official ID where anyone who came in could grab it. Curiously, Laura peeked at the badge as she cleared away the trash. She had never seen a federal agent's badge before. Then she froze. The name on the badge, Special Agent Charles Newton, was the name given by the man she had been talking to, but his photo didn't match. According to the badge, Special Agent Newton was a black man who looked roughly 10 years older than the white man she had been speaking with. Laura's heart started pounding. She noticed something else. A fleck of blue paint near one corner of the badge. Paint, like Olivia Montana had used. Now in full panic, Laura darted to the nearby front door. It was locked, and the latch had been covered in a thick, crusty substance that wouldn't allow it to turn. As she struggled with the door, Laura noticed the open sign had been flipped to closed. She wondered how long it had been like that. Abandoning the front door, Laura ran back into the kitchen. Antonio had just used the back door. She knew it would be unlocked. She stumbled through the kitchen door and came face to face with the man she had thought was Agent Newton. He was holding a gun. The killer raised the gun to her head. Shrugging, he said, I know, it seems too simple, the gun. What can I say? It's all the agent had on him besides the badge. Oh well, I'll get to be more creative next time. I mean, look around. I could find 100 ways to kill someone with the stuff in this kitchen. Please don't do this, Laura begged. What? I thought you wanted to feel close to the investigation. How much closer could you get? He asked, then smirked and added, Number 8? Those were the last words Laura ever heard. Craig found her the next day. In the pocket where she normally kept her notebook, the police found Agent Newton's badge. They also found Newton's thumbprint on the shell casing from the bullet that had passed through Laura's eye and exited through the back of her skull. That seemed impossible, since Agent Newton's body had been discovered the night before. His eyes, nose, and mouth had all been filled with paint. At the diner, the murderer had left all the cash in the register. He even left the money the other customer had left on the table. The only item missing from the diner was a long, serrated knife.